I can barely stomach the thought of touching that fat pig tonight. I froze. In the hallway of my own home, Michael's voice carried through the half-closed study door. It slithered into the silence like poison, casual and confident. "Nicole said the papers will be ready by Monday," he went on. "Chicago Bank doesn't wait. By the time her mother blinks, Chestnut Bend will be ours." Our family landmine, reduced to a prize in his mouth. People believe betrayal comes with shouting. It doesn't. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper you were never supposed to hear. Across the lawn, the wedding tent shimmered with soft lights. Tomorrow, my daughter Grace would walk down that aisle in lace and innocence. Tonight, I clenched my mother's broken rosary until the beads bit into my palm. A weapon of patience. I stepped away from the door before the scream in my chest could escape. When I found Grace upstairs, she was smoothing her gown, cheeks flushed. "Mom, what's wrong?" "I heard him," I said quietly. "He called you a pig. He spoke of bank papers. He plans to take Chestnut Bend." Her eyes filled with panic, then doubt. "Michael wouldn't. He's helped me through everything. He loves me." "Love doesn't make plans behind your back. Chloe says you're just scared of letting go." I steadied my voice. "I'm scared of losing you to someone who sees only what you can sign." She turned away. "He's starting a business. You wouldn't understand." I smiled the way a soldier smiles before battle. "Then let my wedding gift be something practical, a symbolic certificate of stewardship, until the real paperwork is complete." Relief softened her features. "That might make him happy. Promise me you'll sign nothing else tonight." "I promise," she whispered. When she left, I slipped into Michael's study. The air reeked of arrogance and cologne. On his desk, contracts, mock-ups, the word legacy printed over and over. I photographed every page, my hands steady as ice. In a locked drawer, more documents waited Grace's name. Chestnut Bend, collateral agreements. Enough to choke the light out of my home if I stayed silent. Outside, laughter swelled. I looked through the window and saw Chloe leaning close to Michael, whispering in his ear while Grace smiled for the camera. The picture of betrayal, perfectly lit. I called James, our lawyer. "Coffee tomorrow, no delays." Then Frank, the investigator. "Tell me how fast a lie travels from a Chicago bank to a Tennessee wedding." "Faster than gossip, slower than guilt," he said. "Give me until Monday." "Monday," I repeated. "That's the day my daughter becomes a wife or a widow to her own fortune." I hung up and counted the rosary beads again. 20 beads to count the hours until morning. If you've ever stood at your own window, knowing the truth, but being told you're imagining it, you're not crazy. You're not alone. Before we dive deeper into tonight's story, please subscribe to Tangled Heart Stories and turn on the notification bell. This is where we share tales of sacrifice, betrayal, and redemption stories that remind us that justice might stumble, but it never truly falls. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below. Your voice matters here. And maybe the next story will echo something you've lived through. Morning came wrapped in sunlight and deception. The house smelled of lilies and sugared pastries, but the air itself felt bruised. Every smile at the breakfast table was a mask, mine included. Grace beamed at Michael as if nothing in the world could shake her. Her laughter rippled like the wind across a pond. She didn't notice that his phone never left his hand. He was texting, smiling to himself, a serpent disguised as a groom. When he kissed her cheek, I saw it, the practiced charm of a man who'd rehearsed every move. After the ceremony, he murmured, "We'll sign the vendor forms." Vendor forms. I almost laughed. James called early. "Eleanor, you were right. Those drafts are financial authorizations. If she signs, she transfers both property rights and collateral use. Can we stop it?" We can slow it, but it has to come from her. I looked out the window where my daughter stood among white roses, twirling her veil like a child. Then she'll hear the truth again, I said, even if it breaks her. By noon, guests arrived. The sun blazed over the tent. Chloe managed the crowd like a queen at court handshakes. Whispers, strategic smiles. Every person she greeted left believing Michael was a gift to our family. She saw me watching and raised her glass, a small, victorious smirk on her lips. I found her near the buffet table. "You're busy for someone who isn't family," I said. She laughed softly. "Oh, Eleanor, I'm practically family. Michael and I go way back. I just want what's best for Grace." "Best?" I repeated. "For whom?" She leaned closer. "You've had your time. Let her make her own mistakes." "It's strange," I said, meeting her gaze. "People who call betrayal a mistake are usually standing on the winning side of it." Her eyes hardened. "Be careful, Eleanor. You sound jealous." "I sound awake," I said, walking away. At the ceremony, I stood beside Grace. The vows were spoken, applause rose, and Michael slid a ring onto her finger. My stomach turned, but I smiled for the camera. Afterward, under strings of lights, guests toasted, music played. The night looked perfect. Michael pulled Grace aside near the edge of the tent, holding a sleek folder. "Just a few vendor contracts," he whispered. Grace hesitated. "Mom said not to." "Your mother doesn't trust me," he interrupted. "Do you?" Grace looked at him, torn. "She's only trying to protect the land," he said, his voice dripping with false hurt. "If you love me, show me you believe in us." My heart cracked from across the room. That's when I moved, calm, controlled. I stepped into the golden light like an actor hitting her mark. "What's this?" I asked, my voice gentle. Michael blinked. "Just paperwork. Nothing important." "Then you won't mind if I read it." He laughed. "Legal jargon, Mrs. Hale. It would bore you." "I've been bored before," I said, taking the folder. My hand brushed his. Cold meeting heat, but I prefer boredom to regret. I opened it. The first line read, "Collateralization of property, Chestnut Bend Holdings." Gasps whispered around us as guests edged closer. Grace's face went pale. "I thought these were vendor forms," she said softly. Michael's jaw tightened. "It's a formality. For the bank." "The bank in Chicago?" I asked, holding his gaze. Something flickered behind his eyes. He didn't answer. Grace turned to me, trembling. "Mom, please don't cause a scene." A laugh burst from Chloe. "She always has to be the center of attention." I looked at Grace. "If I stay silent, you lose everything your father built." "Eleanor!" Michael hissed. "You're overstepping." "No," I said. "I'm correcting." I turned to the guests. Would anyone here like to witness a miracle? A man marrying a woman and a bank at the same time? The laughter that followed wasn't kind. It was sharp, nervous, uncomfortable. Grace fled in tears, and the party fractured like glass. Later that night, she locked herself in her room. I could hear her sobbing through the door. "You ruined everything!" she cried. "He said you'd do this." "He said I'd protect you," I whispered, and he was right. The door stayed closed. By dawn, the town was alive with whispers. Eleanor Hale crashed her own daughter's wedding. She's losing her mind. She can't let go. Chloe made sure of it, her social media flooded with smiling photos, carefully captioned to paint me bitter and cruel. But inside that storm, I kept still. I visited the stables, where my husband's old desk stood under a skylight. I opened the drawer and took out a box labeled Records. Inside was the original deed, sealed and notarized, still in my name. The one Grace thought she'd inherited last year was only a decorative replica. I smiled. A small, private triumph. That afternoon, I met James at his office. "You were wise to keep the real deed," he said. "But Michael's trying to leverage your family trust through another channel. He's opening a business credit line under Grace's name." I traced the emails. There's a Nicole R. CC'd on every correspondence. "Nicole," I murmured. "The banker." "Yes, and one more thing," James said. "A woman named Chloe has power of attorney in the secondary documents." I closed my eyes. The friend, the accomplice. "Send everything to Frank," I said. "I want proof that can burn." "Eleanor, be careful," James warned. "If you move too early, they'll bury it." "I'm not the one who should be afraid of dirt," I said. That night, Frank called. "I've got something. You were right about Chicago Bank. There's a trail: emails, deposits, dinner reservations for 2 under your son-in-law's name. He's meeting Nicole tomorrow." "Get me photos," I said. "I'll get you the truth," Frank replied. "But it's going to hurt." "Truth always does," I whispered. The following day began too quietly. No footsteps from Grace, no clinking dishes from the kitchen, only the steady hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my heartbeat, sharp and deliberate. When I reached her room, the bed was made, the closet half empty. On the vanity sat her wedding bouquet, wilting roses tied with a silk ribbon. Beneath it, a note. "Mom, I need space. Don't contact me for a while. Please trust me." The words felt colder than any insult. Space, every mother's punishment for caring too much. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. There was no time to grieve. I had a thief to stop. Frank met me that afternoon in a small diner off Route 7. His coat smelled of rain and old coffee. He slid an envelope across the table. "Photos, recordings, emails. Enough to raise hell in a courthouse," he said. Inside were glossy prints, Michael with Nicole, laughing over dinner, a hand on her knee, Nicole passing him a folder labeled Trust Transfer. The timestamp matched the night before the wedding. Frank continued. "He's running everything through a shell company, Riverside Equity, registered under Grace's name. But the loan guarantor is you." "Me?" "Fake authorization. Looks like your signature." I studied the page. My name flowed across the document in ink too perfect. "They're fast," I murmured. "Not faster than guilt," Frank said. "But there's more. You're being painted as mentally unfit. Anonymous calls to local papers. Whispers that you've been declining since your husband passed." The words struck deeper than I expected. "He's not just taking our land," I said quietly. "He's taking my name." "Then take it back," Frank said. I smiled faintly. "Oh, I intend to." That evening, I sat by the window and watched dusk spill over Chestnut Bend. My husband used to say, "The land listens before it speaks." I wondered what it would tell me now. Perhaps that storms need stillness first. My phone buzzed. James again. "Eleanor, we've traced the transactions. Michael withdrew $200,000 this morning. He's transferring assets under Grace's trust. We can freeze it, but you'll need evidence connecting Nicole and Chloe to the fraud." I turned to the folder Frank had given me. The emails between Nicole and Michael were careful, coded, but one thread stood out. "Keep her sweet and signing. Once it's in, we'll shift the collateral. Don't worry, Chloe's covering the local end." There it was. The bridge between deceit and proof. "Send this to your assistant," I told James. "Prepare a formal injunction and call Daniel Ramirez." "The brother?" "Yes," I said. "He's the only one who's lost more to Michael than I have." Daniel arrived 2 days later, worn and weary. His eyes carried the same exhaustion I saw in my mirror. "I heard you wanted to talk about my brother," he said, voice flat. "I don't want to talk," I said. "I want justice." but not the kind that bleeds, the kind that lasts. I showed him the recordings, the laughter, the slurs, the proof of deception. He stared at the table for a long time, jaw trembling. He made our father co-sign a loan he never understood. When the debt collectors came, Dad had a stroke, never recovered. His voice cracked, and still, Michael never came to the funeral. "That's why I need you," I said softly. "You're not testifying for me, you're testifying for everyone he's taken from." Daniel looked up. "You really think anyone will believe us?" "They don't have to," I said. "They'll hear him." I pressed play. Michael's voice burst from the small recorder. "Putting up with that little pig is worth it. Her mother's estate will fund everything." Daniel's face twisted with rage and disgust. "You kept this?" "I kept everything," I said. "Now it's time the world hears it, too." That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted an anonymous email to the local radio host, attaching the audio file. Subject line, "Truth from Chestnut Bend." When the morning broadcast aired, the town stopped. The recording echoed through car radios, shop speakers, kitchen counters. Michael's cruel laughter, the confession of greed, the insults toward Grace. By noon, his reputation was ash. Grace called me for the first time in weeks. Her voice was shaking. "Mom, what did you do?" "What needed to be done." I heard him. I heard everything. Silence filled the line, then a sob. "He said he loved me." "He loved ownership," I said, "not love." Another pause. "I want to make this right." "Then come home," I said. "We still have one thing left to finish." When she arrived that evening, Grace looked smaller, as if life had taken scissors to her spirit, but her eyes were steady. "I'll testify," she said before I could speak. "Whatever it takes." I nodded. "It won't be easy." "It doesn't have to be," she said. "It just has to be fair." Outside, the sky cracked open with thunder. I stood at the window, the storm reflected in the glass. Tomorrow, the courthouse would open its doors to truth, and I would walk through them not as a broken mother, but as the keeper of every promise ever made to my family. Because sometimes revenge isn't about rage, it's about restoration. And justice, when it finally arrives, sounds a lot like peace. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old dust, like history itself was holding its breath. Reporters buzzed in the lobby, flashes bursting as if light could erase the darkness we were about to expose. Grace walked beside me, her hand cold, but steady. Her pale blue dress made her look younger, almost fragile, yet her eyes burned with quiet resolve. For the first time, I saw not my daughter the dreamer, but a woman ready to face truth head-on. Across the hall, Michael straightened his tie. Nicole stood near him, sleek and composed, pretending she wasn't the woman from those photos. And behind them, Chloe scrolled her phone like none of this mattered. They didn't look at me. Cowards rarely do. James leaned in. "Remember, stay composed. Let the evidence speak first." "I've been composed my entire life," I said. "Today, I speak." The judge entered. Case 214, Hale versus Ramirez et al. Allegations fraud, coercion, and unlawful transfer of property. The words rolled like thunder. James began his opening calmly. "This is not merely a case about money. It's about betrayal dressed as love, deceit hidden behind family." Michael's lawyer scoffed. "My client's mother-in-law is suffering from emotional instability. She's inventing conspiracies to discredit him." I almost smiled. Instability. It was their favorite weapon against women who fought back. James gestured to me. "Mrs. Hale, please tell the court what you discovered." I stood, my voice steady. My daughter was manipulated into signing documents that would have placed my land Chestnut Bend under collateral. The man who married her had no interest in family. He wanted ownership. Michael rose, furious. She's lying. This is her revenge because I refused to let her control Grace. The judge raised a hand. Sit down, Mr. Ramirez. James pressed a button. A recording filled the courtroom. Putting up with that little pig is worth it. Her mother's estate will fund everything. The sound cracked through the silence like a whip. Gasps erupted. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Michael's face drained of color. The judge's gavel struck once. Order! Your Honor, James said, this recording was aired publicly only after my client's legal evidence was suppressed by false claims of insanity. The voice belongs to the defendant. Michael lunged for the microphone. You think this proves anything? That was a joke taken out of context. Then Daniel stepped forward. Calm, collected. Your Honor, I am Michael's brother. I'd like to testify. The courtroom shifted. Even Michael froze. Daniel's voice trembled only once. He used our father to sign fraudulent documents. It killed him. He's been using people for years, and now he's using her family too. He pointed toward Grace. He'll never stop until he's exposed. The room went utterly still. Nicole whispered something to Michael, but he shoved her hand away. You said this was under control. Her mask cracked. You're finished, Michael. The bank's freezing the accounts. You're useless to me now. And just like that, she walked out, heels clicking against marble like a funeral march. Chloe looked between them and me. I met her eyes, and for the first time, she looked small. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she murmured. Everything goes exactly as far as greed allows, I said. When the judge returned from recess, her expression was unreadable. The court finds sufficient evidence of fraudulent activity and coercion. Michael Ramirez is hereby sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Chloe Monroe, 3 years, suspended sentence, pending full cooperation with investigators. Michael shouted as officers restrained him. Grace, you'll regret this. I loved you. She stood, shoulders squared. No, you loved my inheritance. And then, softly but clearly, I want a divorce. The entire courtroom seemed to exhale. As he was led away, Michael twisted once more toward me, venomous. You think you've won? You'll die alone in that dusty farm. I stepped forward just enough for him to hear me. Better alone than owned. His face contorted with fury as they dragged him from the room. The rain had stopped by the time we walked outside. The town that once whispered behind my back now watched with wide, humbled eyes. People parted for us like water around a rock. Grace stopped on the courthouse steps and looked up at the gray sky. It feels empty, she said quietly. It will, I replied, for a while, but empty means room for something new. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. I reached for her hand. Come home. Chestnut Bend's been waiting for you. She squeezed my fingers. Let's go. That night, we ate dinner at the long wooden table, 2 bowls of soup, nothing fancy. The house was quiet, except for the sound of the storm fading in the distance. For the first time in months, silence felt safe. Grace looked at me. Mom, thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled softly. That's what mothers do. We stay until the truth arrives. Outside, lightning flickered, lighting the fields in gold. I thought of my husband and whispered, "It's over." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just over, it was beginning again. Because surviving betrayal doesn't end with punishment. It begins with peace. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of life slowly returned different. Quieter, but real. The scandal faded from the town's gossip mill, replaced by new dramas, new distractions. Yet at Chestnut Bend, healing had its own pace. Grace moved back into the guest cottage overlooking the orchard. She spent mornings feeding the horses, her hands once manicured, now rough from work. In the evenings, we sat on the porch with tea, saying little. Silence had become our truce, our therapy. Sometimes I'd catch her standing under the old mango tree, where her father's ashes were buried. She'd touch the trunk, eyes glistening, whispering something I never intruded on. We both had our conversations with ghosts. One morning, I found her in the kitchen, flipping through the estate ledgers. "I think I can handle this now," she said. I smiled. "You already are." She hesitated. "Mom, do you ever wish you'd walked away instead of fighting?" I looked out the window where the sunlight hit the fields in soft streaks. No. Walking away is sometimes noble, but not when someone's trying to erase you. Then standing still is the fight. She nodded slowly. I get that now. I could see the woman she'd become, the strength built from ashes, the calm that only comes after surviving a storm that should have ended you. One afternoon, Daniel stopped by. He brought a potted sapling, a young mango tree. "It's from your old grove," he said quietly. "Figured you could use a fresh start." Grace took it gently, her fingers brushing the leaves. "Thank you." As he left, she turned to me. "I want to plant it by Dad's tree. Maybe it'll remind me that new things can grow beside what's gone." So we did. Side by side, under a pale spring sky, we dug into the soil and placed the sapling near the old roots. When the wind rose, the leaves of both trees touched like an old promise renewed. I placed my hand over hers, and for the first time in years, the ache inside my chest loosened. That night, the house felt alive again. The radio hummed softly from the kitchen, the same station that had once broadcast Michael's confession. Funny how justice sometimes travels the same airwaves as sin. Grace poured us each a cup of tea. "Do you ever wonder if people change?" she asked. I thought for a moment. People do what pain teaches them. Some learn compassion, others control. Michael learned nothing. She smiled faintly. "And you?" "I learned that peace doesn't mean forgiving everything. It means not letting it live rent-free inside you anymore." She raised her cup. "To peace, then." "To truth," I said. The wind outside carried the scent of rain, and mango blossoms the smell of beginnings. A week later, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name, typed neatly. Inside, a single page from Chicago Bank, audit closure, case resolved. At the bottom, a handwritten note. "Some debts are paid in silence." No signature, but I knew who it was from. Nicole. I folded the note and slipped it into the family ledger, between the pages that held our deeds and birth certificates. Not as forgiveness, just as history. Because every story of betrayal deserves its ending, and every ending its proof. That evening, as twilight spread across the land, Grace and I walked through the orchard. The new mango tree swayed beside the old one, both casting long shadows on the grass. She looked at me and whispered, "Do you think Dad would be proud of us?" I smiled. He'd say we fought like Hales do, quietly, but completely. The air smelled of wet earth and renewal. I realized then that revenge hadn't been the victory. It was reclaiming peace, dignity, and love without apology. Justice had come, late, scarred, but real. And as fireflies began to rise in the dusk, I knew. Every wound life carves, eventually, grows a ring of strength around it, just like trees do. If this story touched you, take a deep breath and remember, you too can rebuild from the ashes. Have you ever faced betrayal and found the strength to stand again? Share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it tonight. Join our community at Tangled Heart Stories, where every tale reminds us that love can heal, truth can hurt, and courage can rewrite endings. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories of family, sacrifice, and redemption. You never know, the next story might just be yours.